Welcome. You have found your way here, and that is enough for now. Settle in wherever you are, whether that is a bed, a couch, a quiet room with the lights dimmed low. There is nothing that needs your attention right now. Whatever occupied your thoughts today can wait until morning. For the next little while, this is your time. Tonight, we are going to spend some time with one of the most familiar animals on the planet. An animal that has lived alongside human beings for longer than any other. An animal whose face, whose form, whose presence is so deeply woven into daily human life that many people cannot imagine a home without one. We are going to talk about the dog. Not in a rushed or complicated way. Not with lists of statistics or urgent points to remember. We are simply going to wander through the world of the dog. Its origins, its biology, its behavior, its senses, its relationship with people, its many forms, and the quiet rhythms of its daily life. This is a long journey, and there is no hurry to reach the end. In fact, you do not need to reach the end at all. If you drift off somewhere in the middle, perhaps during a description of a dog sleeping in a patch of afternoon sun, or during a passage about how a dog follows a scent trail through a field, that is perfectly fine. That is, in many ways, the point. The dog is a wonderfully calming subject. Its life is full of rest. It sleeps more hours than it is awake. It finds comfort in routine, in warmth, in familiarity. Listening to these words, you are in good company. So let us begin. Let us talk about the dog. If you enjoy what you hear here on Sleepy Scientist, a like and a quiet subscription to the channel means a great deal. It helps more people find this kind of calm, educational content. But there is no pressure. Settle in. We have plenty of time. The dog is a mammal. That much is immediately clear. It breathes air, gives birth to live young, nurses its offspring with milk, and maintains a warm internal body temperature regardless of its surroundings. It has 4 limbs, a spine, and a brain organized in broadly the same way as that of other mammals, including humans. More specifically, the dog belongs to the order Carnivora, a grouping of mammals whose digestive systems and ancestral diets are oriented toward meat. Within that order, it is a member of the family Canidae, the family that also includes wolves, foxes, jackals, coyotes, and dingoes. Canidae is a well-represented family across the globe, with members found on every continent except Antarctica. The dog's formal scientific name is Canis lupus familiaris. That name tells a story on its own. Canis is the Latin word for dog. Lupus is the Latin word for wolf, and familiaris means domestic or of the household. So the full name might be translated very loosely as the familiar wolf, the wolf that came inside. That naming is not a coincidence. The domestic dog is a direct descendant of the wolf, not a distant cousin, not a parallel branch on the evolutionary tree, a descendant. Today's dog and today's gray wolf share a common ancestor, and the domestic dog is classified as a subspecies of the gray wolf, Canis lupus, alongside the dingo and a few other wild or semi-wild populations. The physical form of the dog is deeply variable. This is one of the most immediately striking things about the species. No other domesticated animal, and arguably no other species on Earth, displays the range of body shapes, sizes, coat types, colors, and facial structures that dogs do. A Chihuahua and a Saint Bernard are members of the same species. A hairless Chinese crested and a heavily coated Commodore are the same animal in biological terms. A greyhound built for speed and a basset hound built close to the ground both belong to Canis lupus familiaris. This extraordinary diversity is entirely the product of human selection. Dogs did not develop these differences on their own. Over thousands of years, people guided the breeding of dogs toward traits they found useful, aesthetically appealing, or practically valuable. The result is the widest morphological diversity of any domestic species on record. Despite this variation, there are features that most people recognize as canine. Dogs have mobile, expressive ears. Their noses are long and prominent, housing an olfactory system of remarkable sensitivity. Their eyes are forward-facing, giving them reasonable depth perception. They have long, agile limbs with non-retractable claws suited to gripping and moving across varied terrain. Their tails are expressive appendages, and their mouths are equipped with strong, adaptable teeth. Most domestic dogs fall somewhere between the extremes of the breed spectrum, and in many parts of the world, the most common dogs are mixed-breed individuals, animals with no specific pedigree, shaped by whatever combination of genetics happen to come together. These dogs are sometimes called village dogs or street dogs in regions where large populations of free-roaming dogs exist. The dog is a social animal. This is fundamental to understanding it. Its ancestral life was built around group dynamics, cooperative behavior, and communication. The domestic dog has transferred much of that social orientation from the wolf pack to the human household, with results that have proven mutually beneficial for both species over an extraordinarily long period of time. The story of how dogs came to be begins not with dogs, but with wolves. At some point in deep prehistory, the precise timing remains an active area of scientific discussion. A population of wolves began a gradual process of association with human beings. The process was almost certainly slow, not a single event, not a deliberate decision made by any one person or group, but a long, gradual shift in the relationship between two species that increasingly found themselves in proximity. Genetic studies have been conducted over the past several decades to try to pin down when this process began, and the results have varied considerably depending on the methods and samples used. Estimates have ranged from as recently as 15,000 years ago to as far back as 40,000 years or more. The most widely cited figures tend to cluster somewhere in the range of 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, placing the origins of dog domestication in the Paleolithic period, the Old Stone Age, when humans were still living as hunter-gatherers. Where this happened is also debated. Different studies have pointed to different regions: Central Asia, East Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and even multiple independent origins in different parts of the world simultaneously. The current scientific consensus leans toward the idea that domestication occurred once, or at most a small number of times, in a geographic region that remains uncertain but may have been somewhere in Central or East Asia. What is generally agreed upon is the broad nature of how it happened. Wolves that were less fearful of humans, that were, in other words, less likely to flee from human presence, would have had a competitive advantage near early human settlements or camps. Humans generated food waste, and those waste sources were attractive to scavenging animals. Wolves that could tolerate the proximity of humans without fleeing would have been able to access these food sources more consistently. Over generations, the wolves that reproduced in these edge environments, close to humans, somewhat tolerant of them, began to differ from wolves that remained in fully wild contexts. The selection pressure was not deliberate at first. No one was choosing which wolves to breed. The wolves that happened to carry traits associated with lower fear responses, calmer dispositions, or higher social tolerance were simply the ones that survived and reproduced in this niche. This process, sometimes called self-domestication, has been studied in modern analogs. One of the most famous is the Russian fox experiment, conducted beginning in the 1950s by Soviet geneticist Dmitry Belyaev. Belyaev selectively bred silver foxes for tameness, choosing, in each generation, only the individuals that showed the least fear and aggression toward humans. Within just a few generations, the foxes began to display not just behavioral changes but physical ones. Floppy ears, curled tails, altered coat coloration, shortened snouts. These physical traits, which are also seen in domestic dogs compared to wolves, are associated with what researchers call domestication syndrome, a cluster of traits that appear to result from selection on the neural crest, a region of developing embryonic tissue that influences both behavior and physical development. This gives some insight into how dogs came to look different from wolves. The behavioral selection that happened through proximity to humans may have brought along physical changes as passengers, so to speak, traits that are linked at the level of developmental biology. As the relationship between humans and these proto-dogs deepened, it became more deliberately managed. Humans began to recognize the utility of these animals for hunting assistance, for guarding, for alerting to approaching strangers, for tracking, for herding, and eventually for companionship. Active selective breeding followed, with humans choosing which animals to allow to reproduce based on desired traits. This is the human-directed phase of domestication, and it is what eventually produced the enormous diversity of breeds seen today. By 10,000 years ago, roughly the beginning of the Neolithic period, when humans were transitioning from hunter-gatherer lifestyles to agricultural ones, dogs were clearly established as domestic animals. Archaeological evidence from this period shows dogs buried alongside humans in ways that suggest meaningful relationships. Skeletal remains of dogs are found at human sites across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East from this period onward. The dog, then, has been with us for a very long time. Long enough that the relationship between humans and dogs is one of the oldest and most sustained interspecies partnerships that has ever existed. Even as a domestic animal, the dog carries the legacy of its wolf ancestry in many of its fundamental behaviors and biological systems. The wolf is a highly social animal. It lives in groups, maintains complex social relationships, communicates through a rich repertoire of vocalizations and body language, and engages in cooperative activities like hunting and pup rearing. These social tendencies are deeply embedded in canid biology, and they did not disappear when dogs were domesticated. They were redirected. A dog's attachment to its human family is, in biological terms, an extension of its evolved tendency to bond with a social group. The human family functions, in many ways, as the dog's pack, a group of individuals it recognizes, monitors, and maintains relationships with. The intensity of the dog's social bonding with humans is one of the things that makes it unusual even among domesticated animals. Dogs seek human eye contact, track human emotional states, and show separation distress when separated from their owners in ways that are not seen in wolves raised by humans. Research has shown that domestic dogs have developed a particular sensitivity to human communicative signals that wolves lack, even when both are raised from infancy by humans. Dogs follow pointing gestures, understand the significance of human gaze direction, and read human facial expressions in ways that appear to be adaptations specifically to life with people rather than skills that simply carried over from wolf social life. There are, of course, behaviors that dogs share more directly with wolves. The circling behavior that many dogs perform before lying down, turning in place several times before settling, appears to be an ancestral holdover from when canids would trample grass or vegetation to create a sleeping spot. The burying of food or objects reflects an ancestral food caching behavior. The tendency to roll in strong-smelling substances, something dog owners know well and often find unpleasant, may have origins in wolf behavior related to carrying scent information back to the group. Dogs also share the wolf's fundamentally territorial instinct. Many dogs mark with urine, patrol their familiar areas, and alert to unfamiliar presences. These behaviors are softened and modulated by domestication, but they are still present. The howl is another wolf inheritance. Not all dogs howl, but many do, particularly in response to certain sounds like sirens or music. The howl in wolves is a long-distance communication tool, used to maintain contact between group members over large distances. In dogs, it seems to serve a similar social function, a response to perceived separation or a signal to others in the vicinity. All of this is to say that the dog is not a blank slate shaped entirely by human hands. It is an animal with a deep evolutionary history, with behavioral tendencies and biological systems that reflect millions of years of canid evolution, and understanding the dog means holding both things at once. It is, simultaneously, an ancient animal shaped by wild pressures and a companion shaped by a very long relationship with human beings. The dog experiences the world primarily through its nose. This is not a metaphor or an exaggeration. The olfactory system of a dog is, by any measure, one of the most developed sensory systems in the animal kingdom. Where a human has roughly 6 million olfactory receptor cells in the nasal cavity, a dog has somewhere between 200 and 300 million. The part of the dog's brain devoted to analyzing smell is proportionally about 40 times larger than the equivalent region in a human brain. What this means in practical terms is that a dog lives in a sensory world that is largely invisible, or more accurately, unsmellable to humans. A dog walking through a park is not merely seeing and hearing the park. It is reading a rich, layered record of everything that has passed through that space. Other animals, other dogs, humans, food, trace chemicals from dozens of sources. The dog can detect individual components of a complex mixture of odors. Can follow a scent trail laid hours or days earlier. It can detect certain substances at concentrations so low they are measured in parts per trillion. Dogs can detect a wide range of volatile organic compounds that humans cannot perceive at all. This capability has been put to work in many domains. Trained dogs have been used to detect drugs and explosives, to locate missing people, to find buried archaeological remains, to alert to the presence of certain medical conditions including some cancers, changes in blood sugar, and impending seizures in epileptic individuals. The dog's nose is also structurally adapted for its olfactory function. When a dog inhales, air is directed in two streams, one for breathing and one that passes directly to the olfactory region. When a dog exhales, air exits through the slits at the sides of the nostrils rather than through the front, which allows new scent-laden air to be continuously drawn in without disruption. The moist surface of the nose helps dissolve scent particles and keeps them in contact with olfactory receptor cells. Hearing is the dog's second most developed sense. Dogs can hear frequencies ranging from roughly 40 Hz to 65 kHz. Humans can hear between 20 Hz and 20 kHz. This means dogs can hear sounds pitched far above the upper limit of human hearing, sounds that are completely inaudible to us. A dog hearing a high-pitched whistle that produces no sound perceptible to human ears is not reacting to nothing. It is reacting to a real acoustic signal that falls outside the human range. Dogs can also move their ears, those mobile, expressive structures, to focus on sound sources independently of each other and of head position. This gives them the ability to triangulate the source of a sound with considerable precision. Vision in dogs is often discussed in terms of what they cannot see, but it is worth noting what they can. Dogs have dichromatic color vision. They see the world in a palette similar to what a human with red-green color blindness would see, with blues and yellows appearing clearly but reds appearing as a shade of yellow-brown. What dogs have that humans do not, however, is a superior ability to detect motion, especially in low-light conditions. Dogs have a higher proportion of rod photoreceptors in their retinas, which are sensitive to light and motion. They also have a tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina that bounces light back through the photoreceptors, increasing sensitivity in dim conditions. This is what causes the eyeshine effect when light reflects off a dog's eyes in darkness. Touch is a significant sensory channel for dogs. The skin contains mechanoreceptors, nerve endings that respond to pressure, texture, and temperature. Dogs are highly responsive to being touched, particularly in ways associated with social bonding. Gentle stroking, scratching, and physical contact from trusted individuals appear to have measurable calming effects on canine physiology. Dogs also have whiskers, vibrissae, around the muzzle, which detect air movement and subtle tactile information from the environment. Taste is relatively less developed in dogs compared to their sense of smell. Dogs have far fewer taste receptor cells than humans, and their taste discrimination is correspondingly less refined. Much of what a dog experiences as flavor is likely driven through the olfactory system. The smell of food contributes enormously to its palatability. Together, these sensory systems give the dog a rich, complex perception of the world, one that overlaps with human perception in some ways and diverges from it markedly in others. Let us take a moment to simply describe the physical range of the domestic dog. At the smallest end, there are breeds like the Chihuahua, a dog that, at its most extreme, might weigh under 2 kilograms. A full-grown Chihuahua can fit comfortably in a human hand. Its bones are fine, its skull is proportionally large and rounded, its eyes are prominent. It is, despite its size, a complete and healthy adult animal. At the largest end, breeds like the English Mastiff, the Irish Wolfhound, and the Great Dane can weigh 100 kilograms or more and stand nearly a meter at the shoulder. An Irish Wolfhound, the tallest of all recognized breeds, may reach over 2 meters in length from nose to tail when fully grown. These are animals of a different physical scale entirely from the Chihuahua, yet they are the same species. Between those extremes lies a spectrum of body forms that is astonishing in its diversity. There are dogs built for speed. The Greyhound, the Whippet, the Saluki. These breeds have deep chests, narrow waists, long legs, and lean musculature. They are built aerodynamically, with a body shape well suited to rapid movement. The Greyhound can reach speeds of over 65 kilometers per hour in short bursts, making it one of the fastest land animals relative to its body size. There are dogs built for endurance and cold climates. The Siberian Husky, the Alaskan Malamute, the Samoyed. These breeds have thick double coats, a dense undercoat for insulation and a coarser outer coat that sheds moisture and provides protection from wind. Their bodies are compact and muscular, their feet large and padded. They were developed by people living in Arctic and subarctic environments, and their physical characteristics reflect the demands of those landscapes. There are dogs with long bodies and short legs. The dachshund, the basset hound, the corgi. These proportions, which appear to reflect a genetic condition called chondrodysplasia, a form of disproportionate dwarfism, were retained because they were useful. A dachshund's low-slung body allowed it to pursue prey into underground dens. A basset hound's proximity to the ground allowed it to work slowly and methodically, nose close to the earth, following scent trails without disturbing them. There are dogs with extremely flat faces. The bulldog, the pug, the French bulldog, the boxer. This characteristic, called brachycephaly, from Greek words meaning short-headed, is the result of selective breeding for a compressed facial structure. The skull is shortened, the jaw foreshortened, and the soft tissues of the face and throat are compressed into a smaller space. It is a trait that has raised considerable discussion among veterinarians and animal welfare organizations, as it can be associated with breathing difficulties. Coat types vary just as dramatically as body forms. The Zoloit squintly, one of the oldest breeds in the Americas, is largely hairless. The poodle has a dense, curly coat that does not shed in the way that most dog coats do. The Old English sheepdog has a thick, shaggy double coat that falls over its eyes. The Commandor develops a coat of long, matted cords that resemble ropes and can reach the ground. The Weimaraner has a sleek, short coat in a distinctive silver-gray color. The Dalmatian has a short white coat covered in black or liver spots. The Irish setter has a rich, reddish-gold coat of medium length. Colors range across the full spectrum available to mammalian pigmentation: black, white, tan, brown, red, gold, gray, cream, and combinations and patterns of all of these. The underlying pigment system is relatively simple. Two pigments, eumelanin and pheomelanin, are expressed and modified by a relatively small number of genetic loci, but the combinations produce a striking variety of coat appearances. In the midst of all this variation, the dog remains recognizably a dog. Certain features persist across the diversity. The forward-facing eyes, the mobile ears, the long muzzle housing that extraordinary nose, the long limbs ending in padded feet with non-retractable claws, the tail that communicates mood and intention, the general posture and movement that reads, unmistakably, as canine. The daily life of a domestic dog is built around several core activities, and chief among them, somewhat surprisingly, is rest. Dogs sleep a great deal. The average adult dog sleeps between 12 and 14 hours in a 24-hour period. Puppies and older dogs sleep even more, sometimes 18 hours or beyond. This is considerably more than the 7 to 9 hours typical of adult humans. A dog's day, in many respects, consists of relatively brief periods of activity punctuated by long stretches of rest. This high sleep requirement reflects the dog's ancestral energy strategy. Wolves, from which dogs descend, are burst energy hunters. They may go long periods without significant activity, then expend enormous energy in a relatively short hunt. Rest is how the body recovers and prepares for those bursts. In the domestic context, those energy bursts may take the form of play, walks, or exercise periods, and the long resting periods that follow are biologically appropriate. Dog sleep has been studied using electroencephalography, measurements of electrical brain activity, and the findings show that dogs experience sleep stages similar to those of humans. Dogs cycle through slow wave sleep and rapid eye movement sleep, the stage during which dreaming appears to occur. Dog owners often observe their sleeping dogs twitching, whimpering, or making running movements with their feet during sleep. These behaviors appear to occur during REM sleep and are consistent with the interpretation that dogs do dream, though the content of those dreams remains, of course, unknowable. During waking hours, dogs engage in a range of behaviors shaped by both instinct and environment. Sniffing is constant and pervasive, the dog's olfactory drive is always active, and a walk for a dog is fundamentally a sensory exploration rather than merely physical exercise. To the dog, the environment is a landscape of scent information, and investigating that information is a primary activity. Play is another important behavior in dogs, and it persists well into adulthood, far longer than in most wild canids. Dogs play with other dogs, with humans, and sometimes with objects. Play behavior in dogs appears to involve genuine enjoyment, though framing it that way requires some care. What is observable is that dogs repeatedly seek out and initiate play interactions, approach them with certain characteristic postures. The play bow, in which the forequarters are lowered and the hindquarters remain raised, and that play interactions are associated with specific vocalizations and behavioral patterns distinct from other contexts. Many dogs show specific working behaviors related to their bred purposes, even in domestic contexts where those purposes are not formally exercised. A border collie may attempt to herd children or other pets. A Labrador retriever may carry objects in its mouth frequently. A terrier may dig. A sighthound may fixate on and chase moving objects. These tendencies reflect the genetic reinforcement of specific behavioral traits over many generations of selective breeding. Feeding in domestic dogs is typically managed by their human companions, but dogs still show behaviors related to food seeking and food management. Many dogs eat quickly, a behavior that may reflect ancestral competition for food at a carcass. Some dogs cache food, burying treats or bones and returning to them later. Many dogs show a food-guarding tendency, particularly around high-value items. Social behavior toward other dogs involves a rich vocabulary of postures, movements, and vocalizations. Dogs greet each other through mutual investigation, primarily olfactory, paying particular attention to the anal and genital regions, where a high concentration of information-bearing glands is located. Interactions between dogs are mediated by body posture. A relaxed body, loose tail, and soft facial expression signal ease and openness. A stiff posture, raised tail, erect ears, and direct stare signal tension or challenge. The vocalization repertoire of dogs is extensive. Barking, probably the most familiar, takes many forms. Alert barks, play barks, demand barks, distress barks. Howling, as mentioned, appears to be a long-distance social signal. Whining conveys a range of emotional states from anticipation to distress. Growling is typically a signal of discomfort or warning. Softer vocalizations, murmurs, grumbles, sighs, are part of the communicative fabric of close social interactions. Communication in dogs operates across multiple channels simultaneously: visual, acoustic, olfactory, and tactile. And reading a dog's communicative signals requires attention to all of them at once. The body is the primary visual medium of communication. The position of the tail conveys a great deal. A tail held high and wagging in a stiff, rapid arc often signals high arousal and potential tension, rather than the simple happiness the wag is often assumed to represent. A tail held lower and wagging in a looser, broader sweep is more commonly associated with relaxed social engagement. A tail tucked beneath the body signals fear or submission. A tail held still and rigid is often associated with intense focus or tension. The ears contribute significantly to the visual signal. Ears pricked forward indicate attention and alertness. Ears pressed flat against the skull often accompany fear or submission. Ears held relaxed and slightly to the side are associated with a calm, neutral state. Facial expression, though dogs lack the extensive musculature of the human face, is also meaningful. A relaxed, slightly open mouth, sometimes called a soft mouth, indicates ease. A tight, closed mouth, particularly in a context of stillness, may indicate tension. Yawning in dogs is often not a sign of tiredness but a calming signal, an appeasement behavior used in social contexts to de-escalate tension. Lip-licking in contexts unrelated to food similarly serves as a calming or appeasement signal. Eye contact has particular significance. A direct, sustained stare between dogs is typically a challenge. It is a high-tension signal that may precede a conflict. Averting the gaze, looking away, or presenting the body at an angle rather than face-on are all appeasement behaviors designed to reduce social tension. The significance of this to human-dog interaction is not lost on behaviorists. A direct human stare may be experienced by a dog as a social challenge, particularly by animals not thoroughly socialized to such contact. Body posture overall contributes to the impression of confidence or submission. A dog making itself appear larger, standing tall, weight forward, hackles raised, is expressing confident or challenging intent. A dog making itself appear smaller, crouching, lowering the head, rolling onto its back, is signaling submission or appeasement. Olfactory communication is harder for humans to perceive but is at least as important to dogs as visual communication. Urine marking deposits complex chemical information about the marking individual, species, sex, reproductive status, and possibly identity. Dogs spend considerable time investigating these scent marks and often mark over or near existing marks. Glands on the feet deposit scent during ground scratching behaviors. Glands near the tail deposit scent during direct interaction and during defecation. In domestic contexts, much of this communicative system plays out in modified and compressed forms. Dogs adapt their communication to the social reality of human companionship, learning to read human facial expressions and body language in ways their wolf ancestors did not, and producing behaviors that elicit human responses. The sit, the paw, the gaze into the human's eyes, these are, in many cases, learned behaviors reinforced by human responses rather than pure instinct, though they build on social foundations that are deeply instinctual. Since this is a program designed around rest, it seems appropriate to pause here and spend a little more time on the subject of sleep, specifically the dog's relationship with it. As mentioned earlier, dogs sleep between 12 and 14 hours a day on average. This puts them comfortably in the category of animals that spend more of their lives asleep than awake. Cats are famous for their long sleep periods, but dogs are not far behind. Some individual dogs, depending on breed, age, activity level, and health, sleep even more. A dog's sleep is polyphasic, meaning it occurs in multiple episodes throughout the day rather than in a single long block as human sleep typically does. A dog might take a long sleep in the morning, wake for a period of activity, nap again in the early afternoon, be active again in the evening, and then sleep through most of the night. The precise pattern varies with the dog's environment and routine, and domestic dogs tend to adapt their sleep patterns somewhat to those of their human companions. The sleeping positions of dogs are varied and sometimes elaborate. Some dogs curl tightly into a ball, a position that conserves body heat and protects the abdomen. Some dogs stretch fully out on their sides, a position associated with deep relaxation and trust, as it exposes the vulnerable underbelly. Some dogs sleep on their backs with their legs in the air, a position that looks improbable but is apparently comfortable. Some dogs sleep with their heads propped on a surface. Some dogs seek out enclosed or sheltered spots that give a sense of security. Some dogs choose to sleep in contact with their human companions, or as near to them as permitted. Body temperature matters in sleep position choices. A dog that is warm may sprawl out to maximize heat dissipation. A dog that is cool may curl up tightly to conserve warmth. Dogs do not have the luxury of adjusting a blanket or a thermostat, so they manage their thermal comfort through posture. During sleep, dogs enter a variety of sleep stages. Non-REM sleep, slow-wave sleep, appears to be the deeper, more restorative phase. REM sleep, which occurs in shorter bouts, is associated with rapid eye movement, irregular breathing, and the twitching and vocalization that owners often observe. Puppies spend more time in REM sleep than adult dogs, possibly because REM sleep is associated with memory consolidation and learning, activities that are particularly intensive in young, rapidly developing animals. The science of canine sleep is not yet fully understood. What is clear is that sleep is essential to the dog's health and functioning. Dogs deprived of sleep show behavioral and physiological changes similar to those seen in sleep-deprived humans. They become less attentive, less emotionally stable, and less capable of learning. Long-term sleep disruption is associated with health consequences in dogs as it is in most mammals. For now, if there is a dog somewhere near you, curled up in a corner, breathing slowly, legs occasionally twitching, know that it is doing something important. It is resting, processing, restoring, and you, in your own way, might find it a good idea to do the same. The dog is classified, taxonomically, as a carnivore. But the domestic dog's relationship with food is more nuanced than that classification might suggest. Wild canids like wolves are primarily meat eaters. Their dentition, the shape and arrangement of their teeth, reflects this. They have sharp incisors for gripping, large canine teeth for puncturing and holding, and carnassial teeth, modified premolars designed for shearing flesh. Their digestive tract is relatively short compared to that of herbivores, which reflects the faster transit time of meat-based diets. Domestic dogs share this dental structure and digestive anatomy. But they also have a notable genetic adaptation that wolves lack. Multiple copies of a gene called AMY2B, which codes for salivary amylase, an enzyme that begins the breakdown of starches. Wolves have 1 or 2 copies of this gene. Domestic dogs have, on average, around 7 copies. This means dogs produce significantly more amylase than wolves, giving them a substantially better ability to digest starchy foods. This genetic adaptation appears to have co-evolved with human agriculture. As humans began growing and eating more starch-rich foods, grains, root vegetables, legumes, the dogs living alongside them began eating more starchy foods as well. The dogs with better starch processing capabilities were able to thrive on this diet, and over generations, the AMY2B gene expanded. It is, in a very real sense, evidence of the shared dietary history of dogs and humans. Modern domestic dogs can digest a wide range of foods: meats, grains, vegetables, fruits. They are opportunistic feeders with flexible digestive systems. Commercial dog foods are formulated to meet nutritional requirements across a broad spectrum of ingredients, and the majority of dogs worldwide eat some combination of processed and fresh foods. The dog's preference for strong smells in food reflects its olfactory dominance over its sensory world. Dogs often prefer foods that smell intensely, not necessarily foods that taste intensely, since dogs have far fewer taste receptors than humans. A food's aroma contributes more to its palatability for a dog than its flavor profile in the strict sense of the word. Dogs typically eat quickly. In a social group, fast eating may have adaptive advantages. It reduces the opportunity for competitors to take food away. This behavior can sometimes lead to digestive discomfort in dogs, particularly large breed dogs prone to a condition called gastric dilatation, a serious and potentially life-threatening dilation of the stomach that is associated with rapid eating and ingestion of air. For this reason, various strategies for slowing eating speed are used by dog owners, including slow feeder bowls and frequent smaller meals. Water is an essential part of the dog's diet. Dogs regulate their hydration primarily through drinking, as they do not sweat over most of their body surface in the way humans do. The primary mechanism for releasing heat in dogs is panting, rapid, shallow breathing that evaporates moisture from the moist surfaces of the mouth, tongue, and respiratory tract. Panting is an effective cooling mechanism but also results in significant water loss, which must be replaced through drinking. The concept of a dog breed is relatively recent in historical terms, even if selective breeding of dogs has been happening for thousands of years. For most of human history, dogs were bred informally, selected for behavioral traits and physical capabilities useful to the people they lived with, but without formal record-keeping or standardization. A shepherd in ancient Anatolia might have kept large, protective dogs and bred the most capable ones together across generations. A hunter in medieval Europe might have favored dogs with exceptional nosework abilities and selected for those traits. But these processes were not systematically documented, and the resulting dogs varied considerably. The formal concept of a breed, a population of dogs with defined physical characteristics, a documented pedigree history, and a breed standard specifying ideal traits, emerged primarily in Europe during the 19th century. The Victorian era saw a significant rise in dog breeding as an organized hobby and institution. Dog shows began to be held, breeding clubs were formed, and stud books, records of breeding lineages, began to be maintained. The Kennel Club in the United Kingdom, founded in 1873, was one of the first formal organizations of this kind, and it established the framework for breed recognition and registration that many national kennel clubs around the world subsequently adopted. Today, the Fédération Cynologique Internationale, the World Canine Organization, recognizes over 300 breeds from countries across the globe. Breeds are typically grouped by their original function or by shared physical characteristics. Working breeds include dogs bred for tasks like pulling sleds, guarding livestock, and performing search and rescue. Herding breeds were developed to work closely with livestock, controlling the movement of sheep, cattle, or other animals through a combination of eye, stalking posture, and controlled movement. Hound breeds include both sight hounds, which hunt by sight and speed, and scent hounds, which hunt by following olfactory trails. Sporting breeds include dogs bred to assist hunters with birds, pointers and setters that locate birds, retrievers that recover fallen game, and spaniels that flush birds from cover. Terrier breeds were developed primarily to pursue quarry underground or in dense cover. Toy breeds are small companion dogs, sometimes derived from miniaturized versions of larger working breeds. Some of the oldest breeds, in the sense of populations that have been maintained with relative genetic continuity for the longest periods, include breeds from regions where human populations were relatively isolated and dogs were essential working companions. The Basenji of Central Africa, the Canaan dog of the Middle East, the Akita Inu of Japan, the Chow Chow and Shar-Pei of China, the Afghan Hound of Central Asia, and the Siberian Husky of Northeastern Asia are among the breeds that genetic studies have shown to be more closely related to the ancestral dog population than many European breeds. Many of the breeds most familiar in Western countries, Labrador Retrievers, German Shepherds, Golden Retrievers, Bulldogs, Poodles, are relatively recent in formal terms, having been standardized or significantly shaped during the 19th and 20th centuries. The Labrador Retriever's name suggests an origin in Labrador, Canada, but the breed was actually developed primarily in Britain from dogs imported from Newfoundland. The German Shepherd was standardized in Germany in the late 19th century by a cavalry officer named Max von Stephanitz, who sought to create an ideal herding and working dog. The Golden Retriever was developed in the Scottish Highlands by Dudley Marjoribanks, later known as Lord Tweedmouth, who kept detailed breeding records of his efforts beginning in the 1860s. Each breed carries a history, a story of what humans needed and what dogs could provide. Reading those histories is, in many ways, reading a chapter of human history alongside it. Throughout history, dogs have performed work for humans across an extraordinary range of domains. This working relationship is one of the most distinctive aspects of the human-dog partnership, and it continues today in forms both ancient and contemporary. Herding is among the oldest documented working roles for dogs. The management of livestock, sheep, cattle, goats, was one of the foundations of early pastoral societies, and dogs were integral to that work. A good herding dog could assist one person in controlling hundreds of animals, guiding them between grazing areas, protecting them from predators, and keeping the group cohesive. Different herding styles characterize different breeds. Some dogs work with an intense, focused eye and low crouching stalk, the style associated with border collies. Others move around the perimeter of the flock. Still others drive the flock from behind. Guarding is another ancient role. Large, powerful breeds were kept to protect livestock from wolves, bears, and other predators. These livestock guardian dogs, including breeds like the Kangal, the Anatolian Shepherd, the Great Pyrenees, and the Maremma sheepdog, are not herding dogs. They live among the flock, bonding with it, and respond to threats with warning and, if necessary, physical deterrence. Some of these breeds are among the oldest maintained dog types in the world, and they continue to be used for livestock protection in pastoral regions across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Hunting with dogs has taken many forms across cultures. Sighthounds like the Saluki and the Afghan hound were used in open desert and steppe landscapes, where the primary hunting strategy was pursuit at speed. Scenthound breeds like the Bloodhound and the Beagle were used to track quarry through complex terrain. Pointing breeds like the English Pointer and the German Short-haired Pointer locate birds and hold still, the distinctive pointing posture, to indicate their position to the hunter. Retrievers bring back fallen birds from water and land. Spaniels flush birds from cover. Terriers, as the name implies, go to earth, entering underground dens and burrows to pursue quarry. In cold climate regions, sled dogs were essential transportation technology. The Siberian Husky and the Alaskan Malamute were bred specifically for pulling sleds across snow and ice, working in teams to transport people and goods across the Arctic landscape. Sled dog teams were the primary means of winter transport in large parts of the Arctic and subarctic for thousands of years. In modern times, sled dog racing is a sport, and mushing, the art of driving a dog sled team, is still practiced. Water rescue has been a role for certain breeds, most famously the Newfoundland, a large, heavily coated breed with a water-resistant outer coat and webbed feet, developed on the island of Newfoundland in Canada and historically used by fishermen for water rescue and hauling nets. Their calm temperament, powerful swimming ability, and size made them effective in saving people from drowning. Contemporary working roles for dogs include law enforcement and military work, search and rescue, medical detection, and assistance for people with disabilities. Law enforcement dogs, often called police dogs or K9s, are trained to track suspects, search for contraband such as drugs or explosives, perform building searches, and apprehend suspects. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds are among the most common breeds used in these roles. Their drive, intelligence, physical capability, and trainability make them well-suited to demanding operational tasks. Search and rescue dogs locate missing people in wilderness environments, disaster scenarios like collapsed buildings, and avalanche debris. They use both air scenting, following scent carried on air currents, and tracking, following ground-level scent trails, depending on training and context. Medical detection dogs have demonstrated in multiple research contexts the ability to detect cancer, Parkinson's disease, malaria, and blood sugar fluctuations with high sensitivity. The mechanism is olfactory. These conditions produce volatile compounds that dogs can detect at minute concentrations. Assistance dogs, including guide dogs for people with visual impairments, hearing dogs for people with hearing impairments, mobility assistance dogs, and psychiatric service dogs, provide practical support that enables many people to live more independently. The training of assistance dogs is a rigorous process that typically takes 1 to 2 years of intensive work. The question of canine intelligence is one that has attracted considerable scientific attention over the past several decades, and the picture that has emerged is both more nuanced and more interesting than earlier views. Dogs learn through a combination of classical conditioning, the association of stimuli with outcomes, and operant conditioning, the association of behaviors with consequences. These are the same fundamental learning mechanisms that underpin learning in virtually all animals, including humans. What varies is the speed and manner in which dogs apply these mechanisms, and the kinds of information they are particularly attuned to learning. Dogs are notably fast learners in contexts that are socially embedded, where human communication and cues are involved. They can learn to follow verbal commands, hand signals, and combinations of the two with relatively brief training. They generalize these learned behaviors across contexts reasonably well, though training in specific situations produces the most reliable behavior in those situations. The concept of intelligence in dogs is better understood as a set of domain-specific abilities rather than a single generalized capacity. A border collie is considered one of the most trainable and responsive breeds for complex command learning, and some individuals have been documented learning the names of hundreds of individual objects. But a breed like the Basset Hound, often rated lower on standardized obedience measures, has an olfactory drive and tracking persistence that exceeds most other breeds. A sight hound may be less interested in following commands but has extraordinary visual acuity and speed. These are different forms of canine intelligence, each shaped by breeding selection for specific functions. The question of canine intelligence is one that has attracted considerable scientific attention over the past several decades, and the picture that has emerged is both more nuanced and more interesting than earlier views. Dogs learn through a combination of classical conditioning, the association of stimuli with outcomes, and operant conditioning, the association of behaviors with consequences. These are the same fundamental learning mechanisms that underpin learning in virtually all animals, including humans. What varies is the speed and manner in which dogs apply these mechanisms, and the kinds of information they are particularly attuned to learning. Dogs are notably fast learners in contexts that are socially embedded, where human communication and cues are involved. They can learn to follow verbal commands, hand signals, and combinations of the two with relatively brief training. They generalize these learned behaviors across contexts reasonably well, though training in specific situations produces the most reliable behavior in those situations. The concept of intelligence in dogs is better understood as a set of domain-specific abilities rather than a single generalized capacity. A border collie is considered one of the most trainable and responsive breeds for complex command learning, and some individuals have been documented learning the names of hundreds of individual objects. But a breed like the Basset Hound, often rated lower on standardized obedience measures, has an olfactory drive and tracking persistence that exceeds most other breeds. A sight hound may be less interested in following commands but has extraordinary visual acuity and speed. These are different forms of canine intelligence, each shaped by breeding selection for specific functions. Across cultures and through time, dogs have occupied a remarkable range of roles in human life. Their presence in historical records is extensive and varied. In ancient Egypt, dogs were both working animals and companions. Paintings on tomb walls and papyrus documents show dogs accompanying their owners on hunting expeditions and in domestic scenes. Egyptian dogs included recognizable ancestral forms of sighthounds, long-legged, lean animals with pricked ears reminiscent of the modern pharaoh hound or Ibizan hound. Some wealthy Egyptians had their dogs' deaths recorded alongside their own. In ancient Greece and Rome, dogs were extensively documented. Roman agricultural writer Columella described the ideal qualities of a farm dog in some detail. Pliny the Elder wrote about dogs in his Encyclopedic Naturalis Historia. Dogs appeared in Greek and Roman mythology. The three-headed dog Cerberus guarded the entrance to the underworld in Greek mythology. Odysseus's faithful dog Argos, in Homer's Odyssey, is among the most moving animals in classical literature. An old dog who recognizes his long-absent master and dies peacefully upon his return. In medieval Europe, hunting with dogs was an aristocratic pursuit of high social significance. Specific breeds were developed and prized for particular hunting functions. The laws governing hunting and the ownership of certain breeds were elaborate, and their violation carried serious penalties. The value placed on certain hunting dogs was considerable. They were gifts between nobles and kings, and their care was managed by dedicated staff. Indigenous peoples of North America, South America, Asia, Australia, and the Pacific Islands kept dogs that had been bred and maintained by their communities for hundreds or thousands of years before European contact. The Carolina dog, also called the American dingo, is thought to be descended from dogs that crossed into North America alongside the first human migrants from Asia roughly 15,000 years ago. The Zoloid squintly of Mexico, a hairless breed, was kept by the Aztec and earlier Mesoamerican civilizations, where it had both practical and ceremonial significance. In many Native American traditions, dogs were deeply integrated into daily life. Dogs in combat has a long history. War dogs were used by ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Persians, and Romans. Mastiff-type dogs were used in battle, sometimes armored, and were deployed against opposing infantry. In World War I and World War II, dogs were used as messengers, for search and rescue of wounded soldiers, for sentry duty, and for carrying supplies. The modern military working dog continues these traditions in contemporary conflict zones. The 19th century, as mentioned, brought formalized dog breeding and dog shows. It also brought changing attitudes toward dogs as companions. The Victorians elevated the concept of pet keeping, particularly of dogs, and the notion of the dog as a member of the family, rather than purely a working animal, became increasingly normalized in middle and upper-class European and American households. The 20th century saw the dog's role as companion continue to expand and deepen, even as working roles evolved. The invention of commercial dog food in the mid-20th century transformed dog feeding practices. Veterinary medicine for dogs developed rapidly. Behavioral science applied to dogs grew as a field, and the emotional and psychological significance of dogs in human life became the subject of scientific inquiry in its own right. The relationship between dogs and human health is one that has drawn increasing scientific attention, and the findings are interesting from multiple directions. The most widely studied effect is the impact of dog companionship on human stress physiology. Multiple studies have found that interaction with dogs, petting, playing, or simply being in proximity to a known and trusted dog is associated with reductions in cortisol, a hormone associated with stress responses. Simultaneously, interaction with dogs has been associated with increases in oxytocin, a hormone involved in social bonding, trust, and relaxation. These physiological effects appear to be genuine and measurable, not merely subjective feelings. They have been documented in controlled settings using blood and saliva samples, and they appear to occur both in humans and in the dogs themselves, suggesting that the interaction is mutually regulating, a shared biological response to social contact between two species that have co-evolved for an extraordinarily long time. Cardiovascular health is another area of interest. Some large-scale studies have found associations between dog ownership and reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, lower blood pressure, and improved outcomes following cardiovascular events. The mechanisms are thought to include both the physiological effects of canine social interaction and the increased physical activity associated with regular dog walking. The presence of dogs in therapeutic settings, hospitals, care homes, schools, and mental health facilities has become increasingly common. Therapy dogs are specifically trained and evaluated for calm temperament and reliability in novel environments. The practice of animal-assisted therapy, which uses interactions with therapy animals as a component of treatment for various psychological and physical conditions, has a growing evidence base. Cannot detect. Seizure alert or seizure response dogs assist people with epilepsy. Some appear able to alert before a seizure, others are trained to respond after onset. The mechanism of pre-seizure detection is not fully understood but is thought to be olfactory. Allergy and the dog is a topic worth noting. Dog allergy in humans is common. The substance responsible is not the dog's hair per se, but proteins found in dog dander, skin flakes, saliva, and urine. No dog breed is truly hypoallergenic, though some breeds with coats that shed less distribute less dander into the environment, which may reduce allergic responses in some individuals. Cross-reactions and individual variability mean that the allergenicity of any particular dog to any particular individual is difficult to predict. The global population of domestic dogs is difficult to estimate with precision, but figures in the range of 900 million to 1 billion dogs are commonly cited. Of these, a significant proportion, perhaps 300 to 400 million, are what researchers call free-ranging or free-roaming dogs. Animals that live without direct human ownership, either as strays in urban environments, as village dogs in rural communities, or in the case of the dingo in Australia, as fully feral populations. The distribution of dogs around the world is heavily shaped by culture, economics, and history. In wealthy, urbanized societies, North America, Western Europe, Australia, Japan, dogs are predominantly kept as household companions, often regarded as family members, provided with veterinary care, and kept within enclosed spaces or on leashes in public. In many lower-income countries, dogs are more likely to be semi-owned, associated with households but not fully managed or veterinarily cared for, or to roam freely. In parts of East and Southeast Asia, attitudes toward dogs are more varied. South Korea and China have traditionally included dog meat as part of the diet in some contexts. Though attitudes are shifting, particularly among younger urban populations, where dog ownership as a form of companionship has grown substantially in recent decades. In much of the Middle East, dogs are regarded with some ambivalence in cultural tradition. Working dogs like sighthounds have been kept and valued, while dogs associated with dirt or waste are viewed very differently. In India, a large population of free-roaming street dogs, sometimes called indie dogs, lives in urban and rural environments. These dogs are largely unowned but often fed by community members. Policies around street dog management vary by region and are subject to ongoing debate between perspectives on animal welfare, public health, and resource constraints. Australia's relationship with dogs has a particular complexity due to the presence of the dingo, Canis lupus dingo, a wild or semi-wild population descended from early domestic dogs brought to Australia by human migrants roughly 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. The dingo has been in Australia long enough to undergo some adaptation to the local environment and is considered by some taxonomists to be distinct from the domestic dog. Dingoes are protected as native wildlife in some Australian states and territories and considered a pest in others. The management of stray and free-roaming dog populations is a significant public health and animal welfare issue globally. Dogs are a primary reservoir host for rabies, a viral disease that, when transmitted to humans through a bite, is almost universally fatal if untreated. The World Health Organization estimates that approximately 55,000 people die from rabies each year, the vast majority in Africa and Asia, and the majority of cases result from dog bites. Mass vaccination programs targeting dog populations are the primary strategy for reducing rabies transmission. Attachment research using separation reunion protocols, similar to those used to assess attachment in human infants, has shown that many dogs display patterns that parallel secure attachment in children, exploring a novel environment more readily in the presence of the owner, showing distress on separation, and seeking the owner upon reunion. This suggests that dogs do not merely associate their owners with food and care, but form something resembling a genuine social bond with emotional components. This is a relationship that has been building for tens of thousands of years, shaped by forces neither species fully controlled. And it has produced something quite remarkable. Two very different kinds of animals, from different evolutionary lineages, sharing households, sharing daily life, sharing something that looks, from the outside, a great deal like affection. The life of a dog moves through recognizable stages, each with its own characteristics and rhythms. Birth and the neonatal period, the first 2 weeks of life, are dominated by sleep and feeding. Newborn puppies are born with their eyes and ears sealed. They cannot see or hear. They cannot regulate their own body temperature. They cannot urinate or defecate without stimulation from the mother. Their entire existence is oriented toward warmth, milk, and sleep. They spend the vast majority of their time, perhaps 90%, sleeping or in a drowsy, quiescent state. The transitional period, from approximately 2 to 4 weeks, brings rapid development. The eyes begin to open, typically around day 10 to 14. The ears begin to open. The puppy begins to take its first tentative steps. The world, previously a world of touch and smell and the warmth of the mother and littermates, begins to expand. The socialization period, from roughly 3 to 12 weeks, is critical. This is when puppies form their understanding of what is normal, what is safe, who is friend, what kinds of stimuli are manageable and non-threatening. Puppies exposed to a wide range of people, animals, sounds, surfaces, and environments during this window tend to develop into more confident, adaptable adults. Those not adequately socialized during this period may develop persistent fearfulness or anxiety toward things they were not exposed to. Adolescence in dogs, roughly 6 to 18 months, depending on breed, brings hormonal changes and sometimes behavioral shifts. Dogs in this phase may test the boundaries of learned behaviors. Large and giant breeds mature more slowly than small breeds. The adolescent phase is often cited as one of the most common periods during which dogs are surrendered to shelters. The puppy phase has passed, the dog is no longer small and inherently manageable, but the adult temperament has not yet fully stabilized. Adult dogs, from roughly 18 months to 6 or 7 years depending on breed, typically settle into the temperament and behavior patterns that will characterize the majority of their lives. Large and giant breeds have shorter overall lifespans and may be considered senior relatively earlier. Small breeds live longer and may remain in their adult phase for many years. Senior dogs, typically from 7 years of age in large breeds, 10 or more in small breeds, may show gradual changes in sensory acuity, mobility, energy levels, and cognitive sharpness. Canine cognitive dysfunction, a condition with some parallels to human dementia, is recognized in older dogs and involves changes in orientation, sleep patterns, social interaction, and house training. Not all older dogs develop this condition, and its progression is variable. The lifespan of dogs is heavily influenced by size, with smaller breeds typically outliving larger ones by a significant margin. A Chihuahua may live 15 to 20 years. A Great Dane has an average lifespan of 8 to 10 years. A Labrador Retriever typically lives 10 to 12 years. The biological reasons for this size-lifespan relationship are not completely understood, but it appears to involve the rate of cellular aging rather than simply metabolic rate. We cannot know from the inside what it is to be a dog. This is a fundamental limitation that applies to all attempts to understand the inner life of any animal other than ourselves. But we can observe and we can reason carefully, and we can form considered views about what it might be like. A dog moves through the world primarily by scent. If we imagine a human walking through a park and receiving, through vision, a rich layered panorama of color, movement, depth, and detail, then for the dog, something analogous might be said to occur through smell. The park smells of 10 different dogs that passed through in the last 12 hours. It smells of where a deer paused to graze at dusk. It smells of rainwater pooled in a hollow, and of the specific chemical signature of each tree that lines the path. Each of these scent signatures carries information, not abstract information that must be consciously decoded, but immediate biological information that tells the dog about the world in the most direct possible way. The dog's relationship with time is also probably quite different from a human's. Dogs do not plan in the way humans do. They do not construct elaborate imagined futures or review detailed narratives of their past in the way human consciousness seems to do. They appear to live with a strong orientation to the present, to what is immediately available to their senses. The anticipation a dog shows as its owner approaches with a leash, the recognition of patterns that predict walks or feeding, the immediate shift in emotional state when a known sound or smell appears, these suggest a kind of temporal awareness without the same narrative structure that human consciousness imposes on time. Dogs dream. We have established this. What do they dream of? We do not know. The behavioral observations, leg-running movements, small vocalizations, brief facial activity, suggest that the dream content is related to physical experience. Perhaps the scent trail followed that morning. Perhaps a play interaction from the previous day. Perhaps just the physical sensation of movement. Dogs appear to be aware of their own states: hunger, thirst, pain, discomfort, ease, pleasure. Whether this awareness rises to the level of what philosophers would call self-awareness is a more complex question. Some research suggests dogs do not reliably pass the classic mirror self-recognition test, though the validity of that test for non-primate species with non-visual dominant perception is debated. A dog's sense of itself may be olfactory rather than visual, and a test based on a mirror may not reveal what a test involving its own scent might. What seems clear from a distance is that dogs experience something. Their lives are not empty. They have preferences, aversions, states of ease and states of distress. They have individuals they are drawn toward and individuals they avoid. They have days that are, in some sense, good, full of stimulation and social contact and pleasant sensory experience, and days that are less so. They attach. They mourn. They age. They are, in short, living beings with inner worlds that are different from ours but not empty. Companions in a more genuine sense than the word usually implies. Let us take a few minutes to stay with the sounds that dogs make, because it is a subject worth more attention than it usually receives. The bark is the most familiar canine vocalization. It is also, in many ways, the most distinctively domestic. Wolves bark, but rarely. Barking is a relatively minor vocalization in the wolf's repertoire compared to howling, whimpering, and growling. Domestic dogs bark far more than wolves do, and some researchers have proposed that barking in dogs is specifically a communicative adaptation to life with humans, a vocalization that produces responses from human companions in ways that other vocalizations do not. Barking takes many forms. Alert barking, sharp, evenly spaced, often in response to a novel sound or approaching stranger, tends to be higher-pitched and regular. Play barking is typically higher-pitched and may alternate with other play behaviors. Demand barking, when a dog wants something, tends to be repetitive and persistent. Distress barking may be prolonged and irregular. Experienced dog owners often learn to distinguish these patterns intuitively, though explicit description of the differences is difficult. The howl is a sound of particular resonance. When a dog howls, head tilted back, muzzle pointed upward, voice extended into a long, wavering note, it is producing a vocalization that connects directly to its wolf ancestry. Howling in wolves is a group behavior used to coordinate the pack across distances. In dogs, howling is often triggered by sounds that may resemble distant howls. Sirens, certain musical instruments, other dogs howling in the distance. It is often contagious. One dog begins and nearby dogs join in. The whine is an intimate vocalization. It communicates need, desire, and distress in a range from mild to urgent. A soft, brief whine might accompany a dog waiting for its food bowl to be placed on the floor. A sustained, distressed whine accompanies separation, anxiety, or pain. The growl exists on a spectrum. A low, rumbling growl during play, when it accompanies relaxed body language, is often a social vocalization without aggressive intent. A growl in response to an approach or a threat is a warning signal, a communication of discomfort that should not be suppressed, as it is part of the dog's communicative system for avoiding conflict. Dogs that have been trained or conditioned not to growl may respond to threat more directly, without the warning phase. Sighs, huffs, and soft exhalations are common in relaxed dogs, sounds that seem to accompany settling, ease, and contentment. These quieter vocalizations are easy to overlook, but they form part of the continuous conversational murmur of a dog at rest. The dog's close relatives, the other canids, are worth a moment of attention, because understanding the family helps us understand the dog. The gray wolf, Canis lupus, is the dog's nearest relative and ancestor. It is a wide-ranging species found across North America, Europe, and Asia. Wolves are highly social animals, living in family groups, often called packs, with complex dominance relationships and cooperative behaviors. The pack typically consists of a breeding pair and their offspring from 1 or more years. Wolves are large. Adults may weigh between 20 and 80 kilograms depending on geographic location, and are among the most successful large predators in the Northern Hemisphere. The coyote, Canis latrans, is a native of North America and has shown remarkable adaptability in the face of human landscape change. Coyotes have expanded their range significantly over the past century, moving into habitats previously not occupied and into suburban and urban environments. They are smaller than wolves and more solitary in their social structure, though they may form family groups during the breeding season. The dingo, Canis lupus dingo, arrived in Australia approximately 3,000 to 5,000 years ago with seafaring peoples. Over millennia of independence from human management, they have become a distinct population with behavioral and ecological characteristics that set them apart from fully domestic dogs. Dingoes are significant apex predators in the Australian ecosystem and influence prey populations in ways that have cascading effects on vegetation and smaller animals. The Ethiopian wolf, Canis simensis, is the rarest canid in the world. Found only in the highlands of Ethiopia, at altitudes above 3,000 meters, it is an endangered species with a total population of only a few hundred individuals. It feeds primarily on small rodents, particularly giant mole rats, and is highly specialized to its highland habitat. Foxes represent a diverse group within the canid family. The red fox, Vulpes vulpes, is the most widely distributed wild carnivore on Earth, found across North America, Europe, Asia, North Africa, and Australia. Arctic foxes live in polar environments and change coat color seasonally, white in winter, brown or gray in summer. Fennec foxes live in the Sahara and have enormous ears that help dissipate heat. African wild dogs, Lycaon pictus, are particularly interesting as a contrast to domestic dogs. They are highly social, living in packs of 10 to 20 or more, and have among the most cooperative hunting and pup-rearing systems of any canid. They are also among the most successful African predators in terms of hunt success rate, far more successful than lions or leopards. They are also among the most endangered, with a total wild population of around 5,000 individuals. The domestic dog, then, is one member of a large and diverse family, each member adapted to its own particular niche and lifestyle. Understanding the dog as a canid, embedded in this broader evolutionary context, gives it an additional dimension of interest. Let us walk through a year with a dog in a temperate climate, a year of seasons, of the changes they bring, and of the rhythms they impose on a dog's life. Spring brings longer days and warmer air. For many dogs, this is a season of increased energy and activity. The world fills with new scents, the earth thawing, plants beginning to grow, other animals becoming more active. Dogs often shed heavily in spring as their winter undercoat releases. Grooming increases. Time outdoors increases. Summer brings heat, and with it, particular challenges for dogs. Unlike humans, dogs do not sweat over most of their body surface. They regulate heat primarily through panting, which is less efficient. Dogs with thick coats, flat faces, or high body mass are particularly vulnerable to overheating. Shade, water, and restricted activity during the hottest parts of the day become more important. Morning and evening, when temperatures are lower, are the preferred times for more active exercise. Autumn brings another coat transition, shorter days, and cooling temperatures. Many dogs seem more energetic in autumn, the cooler air and the rich sensory environment of fallen leaves, changing smells, and increased animal activity create stimulating conditions. The scent world of autumn, leaf mold, earth, the passage of deer and other animals preparing for winter, is particularly rich. Winter in colder climates brings specific considerations. Dogs with double coats may be well protected against cold. Dogs with short, thin coats may require additional warmth for extended outdoor time. Snow changes the texture of the scent environment. Cold temperatures reduce the volatility of odor compounds, and snow may cover ground-level scents while creating new surfaces that collect falling scent particles in different ways. Many dogs show obvious enjoyment of snow, a stimulus that is novel, cold, interesting in texture, and non-threatening. Throughout all seasons, the rhythms of a dog's day tend to remain consistent. Wake, morning activity, rest, midday quiet, afternoon activity, evening social time, night sleep. The specifics change with the season, but the structure persists. Dogs are creatures of rhythm, and their daily routines provide a scaffolding of predictability within which they are relaxed and settled. The coat of a dog serves functions beyond aesthetics. It regulates body temperature, provides some physical protection, and carries chemical information. Its maintenance is an aspect of dog care that varies significantly by breed and coat type. Dogs with double coats, a dense, insulating undercoat beneath a longer outer coat, shed their undercoat seasonally. This process, called blowing the coat, can be dramatic, producing remarkable quantities of loose fur over a period of weeks. Regular brushing during this period removes the loose undercoat and reduces the distribution of shed fur throughout the living environment. Breeds like the Siberian Husky, Alaskan Malamute, German Shepherd, and Golden Retriever are heavy shedders with double coats. Single-coated breeds shed less but still require regular maintenance. The Poodle, with its curly, non-shedding coat, requires regular clipping and grooming to prevent the coat from matting. The Shih Tzu and Yorkshire Terrier, with their long, silky coats, require daily brushing. The Bichon Frise has a curly coat similar to the Poodle's that requires professional grooming. Short-coated breeds, the Labrador Retriever, the Boxer, the Beagle, require the least grooming attention, though they do still shed and benefit from occasional brushing to distribute oils and remove loose hair. The skin beneath the coat produces oils that help waterproof and condition the fur. Bathing a dog washes away these oils, so the frequency of bathing requires some balance. Overbathing can dry the skin and coat. Underbathing can allow the accumulation of environmental material that can lead to skin conditions. Ear care is particularly important for breeds with long, floppy ears, the Cocker Spaniel, the Basset Hound, the Bloodhound. These ears trap moisture and reduce air circulation in the ear canal, creating conditions that can promote infections. Regular inspection and cleaning of the ears is part of routine care for these breeds. Nail maintenance is important for all dogs. Nails that are allowed to grow too long can interfere with normal walking mechanics and put abnormal stress on the foot and leg structures. Dogs that walk regularly on hard surfaces naturally wear their nails down, while dogs that spend more time on soft surfaces may require more frequent trimming. The act of grooming, brushing, combing, bathing is also a social interaction between the dog and its human companion. Many dogs come to tolerate and even enjoy grooming once they are accustomed to it, and the physical contact involved engages the same social bonding systems as other forms of touch. The dog has been a subject of human creative expression across cultures and centuries. Its presence in literature, art, and cultural practice reflects the depth and breadth of the relationship. In visual art, dogs appear in works ranging from ancient cave paintings to contemporary photography. The Romans produced detailed mosaic depictions of dogs, including the famous cave canon, Beware of the Dog, mosaic found at the entrance of a house in Pompeii, depicting a large dog on a chain. European medieval tapestries frequently include hunting dogs as integral elements of the pictured landscape. Diego Velázquez paintings at the Spanish court frequently include the Mastiff-type dogs kept there. Francisco Goya painted intimate portraits of domestic dogs. Edwin Landseer, who gave his name to the Landseer variety of the Newfoundland, produced highly realistic and emotionally evocative paintings of dogs in Victorian Britain. In literature, the dog appears in roles ranging from loyal companion to working animal to symbol. Jack London's Call of the Wild and White Fang are among the most famous dog-centered novels in English, both exploring the relationship between the canid's wild nature and the domesticated world. John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men includes a memorable and moving passage involving a dog whose fate is among the novel's most emotionally weighted moments. In Mark Twain's writing, dogs appear as characters of sympathy and occasional humor. Tolkien's extended mythology features enormous dog-like beings of great power. The dog as loyal companion is a theme that appears across literary traditions. The Japanese story of Hachiko, an Akita who waited at a Tokyo train station for his deceased owner for nearly 10 years, became one of the most celebrated animal loyalty stories of the 20th century. A bronze statue of Hachiko stands at the entrance to Shibuya Station in Tokyo, one of the most visited city landmarks in Japan. In myth and religion, dogs occupy varied and significant positions. Anubis, the Egyptian god associated with the afterlife, is depicted with a jackal or dog head. In Greek mythology, the dog Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, is associated with the hunting dog of Orion. In Norse mythology, the hound Garm guards the entrance to the realm of the dead, as does Cerberus in Greek tradition. In Hindu tradition, the god Bhairava, a fierce form of Shiva, is accompanied by a dog. In several indigenous American traditions, dogs were believed to guide the souls of the dead. Dogs also appear in music, film, and television across cultures and eras. Lassie, the rough collie character created in a 1940 novel and brought to film and television, became one of the most recognized fictional animals in the world. Rin Tin Tin, a German shepherd rescued from a World War I battlefield, became a major film star in the 1920s. Beethoven, Marley, Old Yeller, White Fang, Balto dogs have anchored countless beloved stories in 20th century popular culture. These cultural representations reflect something genuine about the relationship, a depth of human feeling toward dogs that is expressed and explored again and again across different mediums and traditions. Modern genomic science has given us a detailed picture of dog genetics that was unavailable to previous generations. The study of the dog genome, published in full in 2005, has illuminated questions about breed relationships, trait inheritance, and the genetic basis of disease. All domestic dogs share a common genomic foundation, but the selective breeding that created modern breeds has resulted in populations that are genetically quite different from each other and from the ancestral dog population. Breed creation typically involved a small founding population, sometimes just a handful of individuals, followed by intensive selective breeding within that closed population. This process, called a genetic bottleneck, reduces genetic diversity and can lead to the fixation of traits, both desirable physical characteristics and, unfortunately, genetic health conditions within a breed. Many pure breeds have elevated prevalences of specific health conditions that are thought to result from this reduced genetic diversity and the inadvertent selection of genetic variants associated with health problems alongside the traits that were being intentionally selected. Certain breeds have elevated rates of hip dysplasia, a developmental condition affecting the hip joint. Some breeds have elevated rates of specific cancers. Some have elevated rates of inherited neurological conditions, eye diseases, heart defects, or endocrine disorders. The brachycephalic breeds, those with flat faces, including bulldogs, pugs, and French bulldogs, have received particular attention from veterinary medicine. The skull shape that produces the flat facial appearance also results in narrowed airways, crowded soft tissue in the throat, and in many individuals, significant respiratory difficulty. Brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome is a recognized condition in these breeds, and its management is a significant area of small animal veterinary practice. Large and giant breeds are predisposed to certain conditions associated with size. Orthopedic problems related to the loads imposed by a large body on developing joints, and a higher rate of certain cancers including osteosarcoma. Genetic testing has become an increasingly accessible tool for identifying inherited disease variants in dogs. Breeders may test parent dogs for known variants associated with conditions in their breed before making breeding decisions. Owners of dogs with symptoms suggestive of a genetic condition may use testing to confirm a diagnosis. The concept of genetic diversity in dogs is an important one. Dogs as a species have retained significant genomic diversity. The broad population has a wide genetic base. Individual breeds, however, have narrow genetic bases relative to this broad pool. Efforts to maintain or increase genetic diversity within breeds, through the judicious introduction of genetic material from outside the breed, for example, are topics of discussion in the breeding community. Let us slow down now. We have covered a great deal of ground, and this is a good point to simply rest with the image of a dog. not doing anything in particular, just being. Imagine a dog lying on its side in a patch of warm light. The room is quiet. The dog's sides rise and fall with each breath. A slow, rhythmic movement. The legs are stretched out, fully extended, as though the dog has simply let gravity settle its entire body against the floor. The ears are relaxed, soft and slightly back, not the alert, forward position they take when something interesting is happening, but the soft, resting position of an animal with nothing to attend to. The eyes are closed. The eyelids move slightly now and then, though not in any urgent way. Somewhere beneath the eyelids, the eyes might be making small movements, the rapid eye movements of dreaming, or they might simply be at rest. The tail lies still. No wagging, no alerting stiffness. Just still. The breathing continues. In pause. In pause. There is something deeply calming about the regularity of it. The body is doing exactly what it needs to do. No more, no less. If you could reach out and place a hand gently on that dog's side, you would feel the warmth of it through the fur. You would feel the chest rise and fall. The body is heavy in the relaxed, trusting way that healthy, resting bodies are heavy. The muscles are not ready for anything. They are simply not doing anything. This is what 12 to 14 hours of the dog's day looks like. This is the center of the dog's life. Not the walks, not the play, not the social interactions, though all of those matter. The center, in terms of time, is this warmth, rest, breath, quiet. If you are finding your own eyes growing heavy, that is appropriate. There is nothing you need to do. You can simply follow the dog's lead. The domestic dog, as a species, is under no threat of extinction. With nearly 1 billion individuals worldwide, it is among the most numerous large mammal species on Earth. But questions about the welfare and future of dogs, in both the domestic and the free-roaming context, are ongoing and important. The welfare of purebred dogs, particularly those with extreme physical conformations that affect their health, has become a focus of veterinary, legislative, and public discussion in many countries. Several European countries have passed or proposed regulations limiting the breeding of dogs with conformations associated with suffering. The Kennel Club in the United Kingdom has revised breed standards in some cases to encourage breeders toward healthier conformations. Veterinary organizations around the world have issued position statements on the subject. The situation of free-roaming dogs, estimated at 300 to 400 million individuals worldwide, represents a complex intersection of animal welfare, public health, and cultural practice. These dogs exist in a range of conditions. Some are well-fed by community members and live relatively comfortable lives. Others exist in marginal conditions with uncertain access to food and veterinary care. The ethical and practical management of these populations is debated. Approaches include lethal culling, trap-neuter return programs, and adoption efforts, each with advocates and critics. Shelter dogs, those living in animal shelters or rescue organizations, represent a significant fraction of the dog population in some countries, particularly the United States. Millions of dogs enter shelters annually, and a significant number are euthanized due to space and resource constraints. Adoption from shelters is promoted by animal welfare organizations as a means of addressing this situation. The relationship between dogs and wildlife conservation is a complex one. Free-roaming and feral dogs prey on native wildlife in many regions, and dogs are considered a significant threat to wildlife populations in certain contexts, particularly on islands where evolved prey species may lack appropriate anti-predator behaviors. In Australia, dingoes occupy a more complex position as a native species with genuine ecological functions. Assistance dog programs depend on a continuous pipeline of dogs bred, raised, and trained for specific roles. These programs are resource-intensive, and not all dogs that enter training programs complete them. The combination of traits required for reliable assistance work is demanding. Research into breeding strategies that maximize successful training outcomes is an ongoing area of inquiry. Step back from the science and the history for a moment. Think about the ordinary things. The sound of paws on a wood floor, the particular soft sound of a dog settling onto its bed. The way a dog's ears perk at a sound too quiet for human hearing, and then relax again as the sound turns out to be nothing of consequence. The way a dog positions itself close to a person sitting still, not always touching but near. The way a dog tracks a person's movement through a room not because anything is happening, but simply because where the person is matters to the dog. The particular quality of the morning greeting, the exuberance of a dog that has woken from sleep and found its person nearby, the whole body engaged, the tail impossibly fast, and then, just as quickly, the winding down, the exploration of the kitchen, the inspection of the yard, the settling by the door. The way a dog learns the rhythms of its people. The exact sound of the car that signals a particular person coming home. The sound of the drawer that holds the leashes. The sound of the refrigerator opening, distinguished from every other sound by the association with the possibility of something interesting. The patience of a dog waiting for a walk. The stillness at the door. The weight shifted from foot to foot. The look toward the human, the look toward the door. Patient, anticipatory, but without urgency. The dog will wait. The end of the walk. The settling back inside. The long drink of water. The turning of circles before lying down. The sigh of a dog returning to rest. These are not grand things. They are not events that make history or appear in scientific papers. They are the texture of a shared daily life between two different kinds of creature who have somehow, over tens of thousands of years, found a way to occupy the same spaces and the same days. The sky is probably dark wherever you are. The day has finished. Whatever it held, the busy parts, the complicated parts, the parts that still feel unresolved, those are all somewhere behind you now. They will still be there in the morning, in the appropriate places, waiting to be dealt with in the appropriate time. For now, the day is done. Think about a dog settling for the night, finding its spot, perhaps a familiar corner, a particular bed, a place that carries the scent of comfort and safety and familiarity. The circling, the adjusting, the final descent into the chosen position. The body going soft, the eyes closing, 12 to 14 hours of sleep ahead. The body needs it and the body knows it. There is no resistance, no negotiation with wakefulness. The dog simply rests because resting is what is needed. Your own body knows this too. It knows how to rest. It has been doing it for as long as you have been alive. It knows the pattern, the gradual softening of muscle tension, the slowing of breath, the cooling of the body's surface, the mind releasing its hold on the day's concerns. This pattern is older than memory. It is older than thought. You can trust the night to do its work. Somewhere right now, in a city or a village or a farm or a forest edge, there is a dog lying down. Perhaps inside a warm house, its back against a soft surface. Perhaps in a kennel, curled with another dog for warmth. Perhaps in a sunny doorway somewhere between inside and outside, where the air moves gently and the sounds of the afternoon come and go. The dog is breathing. His chest rises. His chest falls. The nose moves occasionally. A twitch, a sniff, as the ambient scent of the world drifts past. The ears might shift slightly at a distant sound. The tail might flick at some internal state that passes as quickly as it arrived. And then stillness again. This is the deep ordinary center of the dog's existence. The resting, the breathing, the easy presence in a familiar place. Not waiting for anything in particular. Not troubled by what has passed. Not anticipating anything beyond this moment. There is a wisdom in it, if we want to call it that. Or maybe there is no wisdom at all, just biology, just the body doing what bodies do when they are safe and well and rested. Either way, it is peaceful to watch, and peaceful to be beside. If you are still awake, that is perfectly fine. There is more to hear, more to think about, more ground we could cover together. Dogs are a subject wide enough to occupy many nights. But if you are drifting, if the words have begun to blur and the images have become soft and indistinct, then go gently. The dog, wherever it is, will still be there when you wake. The morning will come, clean and ordinary and full of small familiar things. Rest now. We spoke earlier about the dog's nose as its primary sensory organ. Let us go deeper into what that actually means in practice, specifically in the context of tracking and scent work, where the dog's olfactory capabilities are most fully exercised. When a person or animal moves through an environment, They leave behind a composite trail of scent information. This trail comes from multiple sources: physical disturbance of the ground surface, crushed vegetation, displaced soil, releases compounds from the organic material. The body itself sheds skin cells and excretes volatile compounds through sweat glands. Footwear or feet press material into the ground and leave a pattern of disturbance at each step. If the individual has been in contact with other surfaces, objects, or animals, those scents may also be carried along. This composite trail decays over time as compounds disperse into the air and degrading bacteria alter the chemical composition of the material. It is affected by weather, rain, wind, temperature, humidity all influence the rate and pattern of scent distribution. A trail left in still, humid conditions may remain more detectable for longer than one left in dry, windy conditions. A trail laid in morning dew may persist differently than one laid on dry afternoon ground. A tracking dog works through the sensory landscape by following the thread of scent from one point to the next, making continuous micro-decisions about where the strongest concentration of target scent lies. This is not a simple straight-line process. The dog may check slightly off the direct path, then return to it. It may work more slowly at track turns or cross tracks, resolving the directional ambiguity of the scent pattern. It may pause and lift its head, shifting from tracking close to the ground to air scenting, to gather additional information. Different dogs and different training approaches favor different modes of working. Ground tracking dogs keep their noses close to the surface and follow the footstep-by-footstep trail closely. Air scenting dogs work with their heads higher, reading the scent cone, the spreading plume of scent particles carried on air currents away from the source, to find the general direction of the target. Some search and rescue dogs are trained to use both approaches depending on the situation. The bloodhound is perhaps the most famous scent tracking breed. Its large, pendulous ears and heavy facial skin folds are thought to help channel scent toward the nose as the dog works with its head close to the ground. Its large nose surface area and high density of olfactory receptors make it among the most sensitive scent-tracking animals documented. Bloodhound tracks have been admitted as evidence in American court cases, testimony to the reliability attributed to the breed's trailing ability. In sport tracking, such as the tracking competitions organized by major kennel clubs, dogs follow a trail laid by a person sometime before the test, navigating turns and finding objects dropped along the route. These competitions formalize and test the natural tracking ability of dogs, and they require weeks or months of careful training to develop the dog's ability to work a track accurately and with confidence. What makes tracking mentally engaging for dogs is not something humans can easily perceive. The dog is doing complex cognitive and sensory work, resolving ambiguous information, making spatial decisions, maintaining focus across a sustained task. After a long tracking session, many dogs rest deeply, the kind of rest that follows genuine mental effort. Scent work appears to be one of the most enriching activities available to domestic dogs, engaging the sensory and cognitive systems for which they are most fully equipped. The dog's digestive system is built for processing meat, but as we have noted, it has adapted significantly for the broader diet that life alongside humans has made available. Let us take a slow walk through the digestive process. Digestion begins in the mouth. The dog has 42 permanent teeth in the adult dentition, 12 incisors, 4 canines, 16 premolars, and 10 molars. The incisors are small and used for nibbling and grooming. The canine teeth, the large, pointed teeth on each side of the jaw, are used for gripping and puncturing. The premolars and molars are used for shearing and grinding. The carnassials, the fourth upper premolar and first lower molar, are the primary shearing teeth, designed to slice through fibrous material. Unlike humans, dogs do not produce amylase in their saliva to begin starch digestion in the mouth. The salivary glands produce lubricating fluid that aids in swallowing, but the enzymatic work of starch digestion begins in the small intestine rather than the mouth. This is one reason dogs tend to eat faster than humans. There is less reason to chew extensively when no chemical digestion is occurring in the mouth. The esophagus carries food to the stomach, where it is mixed with hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes. Dog stomach acid is highly acidic, with a pH lower than that of human stomach acid, which allows for the breakdown of dense animal protein and, significantly, the killing of bacteria that may be present in raw meat or bone. This is one reason dogs can safely consume foods that would cause illness in humans. The small intestine is where the majority of nutrient absorption occurs. Proteins are broken down into amino acids, fats into fatty acids and glycerol, carbohydrates into simple sugars. These products are absorbed through the intestinal wall into the blood and lymph. The dog's small intestine is proportionally shorter than that of herbivores, reflecting the faster transit time of a meat-based diet. The large intestine absorbs water and electrolytes and prepares the remaining material for excretion. Dogs typically defecate 1 to 3 times per day, though this varies with diet and individual physiology. The liver plays a critical role in metabolizing absorbed nutrients, detoxifying substances, producing bile for fat digestion, and storing glycogen. The pancreas produces digestive enzymes and the hormones insulin and glucagon, which regulate blood sugar. Dogs have a requirement for specific nutrients that must be obtained from the diet: protein and its constituent amino acids, fatty acids, carbohydrates as an energy source, vitamins, and minerals. Some of these requirements are different from humans. Dogs, for example, can synthesize vitamin C and do not require dietary sources the way humans do. Dogs require a dietary source of vitamin D and calcium for bone health. Dogs require arachidonic acid, a specific fatty acid that is found in animal-based fats. Certain foods are toxic to dogs that are not toxic to humans. Xylitol, an artificial sweetener, causes a rapid, dangerous drop in blood sugar in dogs. Grapes and raisins can cause kidney failure for reasons not fully understood. Onions and garlic contain compounds that can damage red blood cells. Chocolate contains theobromine and caffeine, which dogs metabolize more slowly than humans, making accumulation and toxicity possible. These differences in metabolism reflect the evolutionary divergence between the canine and human digestive systems. The dog's brain is organized broadly along the same lines as the brains of other mammals. The same major structures are present: the brainstem, the cerebellum, the limbic system, and the cerebral cortex. The relative sizes and development of these structures vary between species in ways that reflect their evolutionary priorities. The olfactory bulbs, the structures in the brain that process scent information, are proportionally very large in dogs compared to humans. Where the human olfactory bulb represents a relatively small fraction of total brain volume, the dog's is substantially larger in proportion. This anatomical fact mirrors the importance of olfaction in the dog's sensory world. The cerebral cortex, associated with complex processing and in humans with consciousness and higher cognition, is proportionally smaller in dogs than in humans. Dogs have a smoother cortical surface with fewer convolutions than humans, though they do have some degree of folding, unlike completely smooth-brained animals like rats. The degree of cortical folding is generally associated with the complexity of processing a brain can support, so the dog's cortex supports less complex processing than the human cortex does, though it is still capable of considerable learning, problem-solving, and social cognition. The limbic system, which includes structures associated with emotion, memory, and motivation, is proportionally well-developed in dogs, as it is in most social mammals. The amygdala processes fear and threat responses. The hippocampus is involved in spatial and episodic memory. The hypothalamus regulates basic drives: hunger, thirst, temperature regulation, reproductive behavior. These are the structures that give the dog its emotional responsiveness, its capacity for fear, for social bonding, for motivation by food and play and social contact. The cerebellum coordinates movement. It receives information from the motor cortex and from sensory systems and uses that information to produce smooth, coordinated movements. Dogs, like all mammals, rely heavily on the cerebellum for locomotion, and its function is evident in the easy grace with which a dog runs, turns, and navigates terrain. The autonomic nervous system, the part of the nervous system that regulates body functions below the level of conscious control, manages heart rate, breathing, digestion, and stress responses. The sympathetic division activates the fight or flight response in threatening situations. Heart rate increases, blood is redirected to the muscles, glucose is released, and alertness heightens. The parasympathetic division regulates rest and digest states. Heart rate slows, digestion proceeds, body systems return to baseline. This autonomic system is relevant to the dog's experience of stress and relaxation. A dog that is chronically stressed, in an environment with frequent unpredictable threats or aversive stimuli, experiences chronic activation of the sympathetic system, with physiological consequences similar to those seen in chronically stressed humans. A dog that is calm, well-settled, and in a predictable, safe environment runs more on its parasympathetic system. The behavioral correlates of these physiological states are readily observable. The relaxed, soft-bodied dog in a warm home versus the hypervigilant, tight-bodied dog in an unpredictable environment. Sleep is associated with parasympathetic dominance, the body resting, repairing, consolidating. A deeply sleeping dog has lowered heart rate, lowered respiratory rate, and lowered body temperature relative to its waking state. It is in the state its body most readily enters when everything is safe and familiar and nothing is required. The dog moves in ways that reflect its heritage as a pursuit predator, built for covering ground efficiently across varied terrain. The basic gaits of a dog are the walk, the trot, the canter, and the gallop. These gaits differ in the pattern of footfall and the proportion of time spent with feet in contact with the ground. The walk is the slowest gait, a 4-beat movement in which each foot is placed individually, with at least 2 or 3 feet in contact with the ground at any moment. It is an energy-efficient gait for slow movement. The trot is a 2-beat gait in which diagonal pairs of feet move together, the left front and right rear, then the right front and left rear. The trot is the working gait of many breeds over distance. It is efficient and sustainable. Dogs that were bred for long-distance herding, tracking, or patrol work are often particularly efficient trotters. The canter is a 3-beat gait and represents an intermediate between the trot and the full gallop. It is a comfortable, moderate-speed gait. The gallop is the maximum effort gait, a 4-beat movement with a moment of full suspension when all 4 feet are off the ground simultaneously. In sighthound breeds, the gallop can reach speeds of 65 kilometers per hour or more. The cheetah is faster, but the greyhound is among the fastest land animals over a short sprint distance. The gallop requires significant muscular effort and is not sustainable for long distances, which is why burst speed hunting strategies differ from endurance tracking strategies. The musculoskeletal system of a dog is built around efficiency and flexibility. The long limb bones act as levers, amplifying the force of muscle contractions into movement. The spine is flexible compared to humans, allowing the characteristic bounding movement of the gallop. The shoulder girdle is not fully attached to the thorax by bone. The shoulder blades are connected only by muscle, which allows for a greater range of forelimb motion and helps absorb the impact of each footfall. Paws are the interface between the dog's body and the ground. The pads, thick, tough structures on the bottom of each foot, absorb impact and provide traction. They are supplied with blood vessels that can regulate heat exchange, warming against cold surfaces and dissipating heat on hot ones. The spaces between the toes contain sweat glands, which are among the few areas on a dog's body that produce sweat. Dogs sometimes leave damp footprints on surfaces not because their paws are wet from outside moisture but from these plantar sweat glands. The nails, non-retractable, unlike a cat's, provide traction on certain surfaces and are used in digging. Dew claws, found on the inside of the leg above the main toes, are vestigial structures in most breeds, remnants of a 5th digit no longer in regular use. Some breeds have been selectively bred to retain or lose dew claws, and their removal in puppies is practiced in some countries and prohibited in others. The reproductive biology of dogs is seasonal in a modified sense. Female dogs, bitches, experience estrus cycles approximately twice per year, though this varies with individual and breed. The estrus cycle has 4 phases: proestrus, estrus, diestrus, and anestrus. Proestrus lasts approximately 9 days on average and is marked by swelling of the vulva and a blood-tinged discharge. The female is not yet receptive to mating during this phase, though males may show considerable interest. Estrus, the phase during which the female is receptive to mating, follows proestrus and lasts approximately 9 days, though this varies. The discharge lightens in color and the female becomes receptive. Ovulation typically occurs in the early part of estrus, and the eggs remain viable for several days. Canine sperm can remain viable in the female reproductive tract for several days as well, making the timing window for successful fertilization wider than in some other species. Diestrus follows estrus and lasts approximately 60 to 90 days regardless of whether the female is pregnant. During this phase, the corpus luteum, the structure that forms at the ovulation site, produces progesterone. If the female is pregnant, progesterone supports the pregnancy. Notably, even non-pregnant females experience elevated progesterone during diestrus, which is why false pregnancies, pseudopregnancies, occur in dogs. A non-pregnant female may develop mammary tissue, produce milk, and show maternal behaviors in response to the progesterone influence. Gestation, the period of actual pregnancy, lasts approximately 63 days from ovulation, or roughly 9 weeks. During this period, the embryos implant in the uterine wall and develop through all the stages from blastocyst to fully formed pup. Litter sizes vary enormously by breed size. A Chihuahua may produce 1 to 3 pups per litter. A large breed like the Labrador Retriever typically produces 6 to 8. Giant breeds may produce 10 or more, though the survivability of very large litters is lower due to competition for nutrition in utero. Puppies at birth are altricial, meaning they require significant parental care and are not yet capable of independent movement or sensory function. They are born with their eyes and ears sealed. The mother's first milk, colostrum, contains antibodies that provide the puppy's initial immune protection. This passive immunity lasts for the first weeks of life while the puppy's own immune system develops. The first 3 weeks of life are spent almost entirely sleeping and nursing. Growth is rapid. A puppy's weight may double or triple in the first week. The senses open during the second and third weeks. Eyes open between 10 and 14 days, ears open at approximately the same time. The world the puppy begins to perceive is initially blurry visually and acoustically imprecise, but it develops rapidly. The period from 3 to 12 weeks, the socialization window discussed earlier, is arguably the most important developmental period in a dog's life in terms of long-term behavioral outcome. The experiences a puppy has during this window shape its responses to the world in ways that are more resistant to later modification than experiences at other developmental stages. A puppy exposed to a wide range of people, sounds, surfaces, animals, and environments during this period tends to develop resilience and adaptability. One isolated from these experiences may develop fear responses that persist throughout life. The mother's behavioral contribution during this period is substantial. She provides warmth, nutrition, stimulation of elimination, protection, and behavioral guidance. Littermates also play a key role. The play interactions between puppies from about 3 weeks onward teach bite inhibition, social communication, and the give and take of social interaction. Puppies removed from their litters too early, before 7 weeks, may show deficits in social behavior later. As dogs age, their bodies and behaviors change in ways that are both gradual and observable. Understanding these changes is part of caring well for an aging dog. Physically, older dogs often show a general slowing. The coat may become coarser or develop white or gray hairs, particularly around the muzzle. Joint changes, often arthritic, may make movement stiffer, especially after rest or in cold weather. The time it takes to rise from a lying position may lengthen. Running, jumping, and sustained activity may become less appealing or more effortful. Sensory changes are common. Hearing loss in aging dogs is well documented. It typically begins with higher frequencies and progresses. A dog that once responded to quiet commands from a distance may begin to require louder or more direct communication. Vision may also decline, particularly in low light. Cataracts, cloudiness of the lens, are common in older dogs and may reduce visual acuity. The sense of smell, the dog's primary sense, typically declines more slowly than the other senses, but age-related changes do occur. Dental health is closely linked to overall health in aging dogs. Periodontal disease, infection and inflammation of the gums and supporting structures of the teeth, is very common in older dogs and can have systemic effects if bacteria from the mouth enter the bloodstream. Cognitive changes associated with aging, sometimes grouped under the term canine cognitive dysfunction syndrome, include changes in orientation and navigation, altered sleep-wake cycles, particularly increased nighttime wakefulness, changes in social interaction, and loss of house training in some cases. These changes are thought to result from degenerative brain changes, including the accumulation of amyloid plaques, protein deposits that are also associated with Alzheimer's disease in humans. Not all aging dogs show dramatic cognitive changes. Many remain sharp and engaged well into old age. Individual variation is considerable. Some breeds appear to age more gracefully than others, and genetic factors likely play a role. The final phase of life in a dog, the transition from aging to end of life, takes different forms in different individuals. Decreased appetite, loss of interest in activity, and progressive weakness are common features. Some dogs decline over months, others quite rapidly. The human responsibility for an aging dog's quality of life, managing pain, ensuring comfort and warmth, providing gentle social contact, is a serious one that many dog owners navigate with care and difficulty. The bond formed over a dog's life, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years of daily companionship, makes its end a significant loss. Research on human grief following pet loss has found that the psychological impact can be comparable to that of losing a human companion. And this is not surprising given the nature and duration of the relationship. The night is quiet. Somewhere a dog is sleeping. Perhaps it is a large dog, a German Shepherd or a Labrador, sleeping stretched on a tiled floor, the ambient warmth of the house enough to make the cool surface comfortable. Its breathing is audible if you stand close. A steady, rhythmic exchange. Somewhere in its olfactory world, even in sleep, it registers the familiar sense signatures of the people it lives with, the particular smell of this building, this room, this night. Perhaps it is a small dog, a terrier of some kind, curled tight in a cushioned bed in the corner of a bedroom, tucked into the shape of something barely bigger than a hat, improbably warm. The feet twitch once, twice, and then are still. Perhaps it is a working dog, a farm dog, in a clean kennel in a barn, the smell of hay and large animals making a particular kind of sensory environment that farm dogs have slept in for thousands of years. The sounds of the night outside, wind in the trees, distant animal movement, are noted and dismissed. Nothing that requires response. Everything safe. Perhaps it is a dog of no particular breed, a village dog somewhere in the world, sleeping in a doorway with the warmth of a building behind it and the night air in front of it, navigating the same compromise between warmth and air that humans find themselves negotiating on certain nights. All of these dogs, in their different places and different circumstances, are doing the same thing. Breathing, resting, dreaming perhaps, letting the night be what it is. You are in good company. 10,000 years is a very long time. Consider what 10,000 years means in practical terms. 10,000 years ago, there were no written languages, no cities, no agriculture of significant scale, no guil. The great civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and the Indus Valley did not yet exist. The pyramids would not be built for another 5,000 years. And yet, 10,000 years ago, dogs and humans were already living together. The domestication process had already been underway for thousands of years before that. When those early agricultural societies arose, when humans began to build cities and establish the foundations of what we would come to call civilization, dogs were already there. They were there through all of it, through the agricultural revolution and the rise of cities, through the ages of iron and bronze and copper, through the building of monuments and temples and roads, through the expansion of empires and their collapse, through the plague years and the migration centuries and the great wars, through the industrial revolution and the technological age. Through all of it, dogs were there, in the fields, at the hearths, in the marketplaces, in the barracks and the kennels and the homes. This is not to romanticize the relationship. It has not always been a kind one in all its forms and all its places. Dogs have been used as tools, have been mistreated, have been kept in conditions far below what their nature requires. The history is not uniformly gentle, but the persistence of the relationship across all those thousands of years, across all the variations in culture and context, speaks to something real. These two species found each other in some deep sense useful. Not just practically useful, though that was certainly part of it, but useful in the broader sense, meaningful to one another, in ways that neither fully planned and neither fully understood. And here we are tonight, in a world of extraordinary complexity and noise and change, with a dog sleeping somewhere nearby or somewhere in the imagination, still breathing, still warm, still doing what dogs have been doing for 10,000 years. Something about that is worth resting with. Before we let the night fully take over, one more quiet thing. The star Sirius, the brightest star visible in the night sky from most of the world, is sometimes called the dog star. It is the brightest star in the constellation Canis Major, the Great Dog. In ancient Egypt, its first appearance on the eastern horizon just before dawn, its heliacal rising, marked the beginning of the Nile flood season and was used to calibrate the Egyptian calendar. This rising coincided with the hottest period of summer in the ancient Mediterranean world, and the phrase dog days of summer comes from this association. The days when Sirius rises with the sun were thought to be influenced by the star's fierce light. The dog star has been watching over the night sky for as long as humans have looked up. And for almost as long as humans have looked up, they have had dogs beside them while doing so. Sirius is a binary star, two stars bound gravitationally together, orbiting their common center of mass. The brighter component, Sirius A, is roughly twice the mass of our Sun and 25 times as luminous. The fainter companion, Sirius B, is a white dwarf, the dense remnant of a star that has exhausted its nuclear fuel. They orbit each other approximately every 50 years. Sirius is only 8.5 light-years from Earth, close, in cosmic terms. The light that reaches your eye from Sirius on a clear night has been traveling for 8.5 years. It left that star when you were a different version of yourself. It has been crossing the darkness of space, unseen and unseeing, all this time, and it arrived tonight. There is something quietly remarkable about that. And there is something quietly remarkable about all of it. The star and the dog and the long history and the present moment, all existing together, all part of the same unbroken continuity of time and matter and life. You are here, and that is enough. Let the sounds of the house settle around you now. The small sounds of a building at rest, the settling of walls, the distant movement of air through ducts or windows, the silence that is not really silence but the aggregate hum of a resting world. If you are in bed, let the weight of the blanket be what it is. Let your body find the position it wants, the one that asks nothing of the muscles. The pillow is exactly where it needs to be. The dog, wherever it is already there, already resting, already somewhere in the long hours of its 12 to 14 hours of quiet sleep. It does not need you to stay awake. It does not need you to do anything at all. Nothing needs you right now. There will be a morning. There will be coffee or tea, and the ordinary business of a day beginning, and everything that needs attending to will still be there, patient as it always is. The dog will be awake before you, probably, alert at the first sign of movement, ready to begin. But not yet. For now, everything is still. Good night. There is one last thing worth noting quietly, before silence takes over entirely. The dog asks very little of the night, finds a warm place, turns around once or twice. It lies down, and then it gives itself to sleep without resistance, without the review of the day's events, without rehearsal of tomorrow's obligations. Whether dogs lie awake troubled by the things they carry, we do not know. The evidence suggests they do not. The body goes soft, the breath steadies, and the sleep that follows is the sleep of a creature that is, in that moment, complete. It has done what it was given to do. It has rested when rest was available. It has been present to the day when the day was happening. This is the dog's inheritance from 10,000 years of domestication and from 10 million years of canid evolution before that. It knows how to be alive. It knows how to rest. You have been listening for a while now. The night has moved forward while these words have drifted past. Whatever remains of it belongs to you, to your body, to the quiet, to the slow work of recovery that sleep performs. There is nothing more to understand tonight. There is only the breath and the warmth and the ordinary miracle of a body at rest in a safe place. The dog is already there. You can follow.